Namaste and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I am Anand Narasimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a nation that is obsessed with not just bleeding India with 1,000 cuts, but also defaming India and creating a false perception. So much so, will you believe if I say that it's not one but two generations of a certain set which is right at the heart of a massive disinformation campaign against our country. And it is set on four important planks. These are the fault lines which they want to use, irrespective of which disposition. It's not because the BJP is in power, or is it because this nation has seen nearly 8 years of Prime Minister, 9 years of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. No, that's not the story. The story is irrespective of whichever disposition, be it Modi or Manmohan Singh. This group has been there altering the narratives, but creating a web and a chain of misinformation and disinformation so as to skew the story against India, so as to skew the perception against India. The overall issue is hatred against India, and the roots of it start with the liberation in 1971. That insult, that shame, that slap, that haunts this nation even today, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why it's funding generations to try and seed A, hatred, B, disinformation, and C, a perception that shows India in poor light. And it's all done on false grounds. In this age where technology can be a tool to arm and also to weaponize, to enable, but also to try and hack and disable, this group stands exposed. The Disinfo Lab has put a series on our 75th year of independence. They have said that they are going to put out a series. But the first part itself is startling, ladies and gentlemen. And we credit them the information that they've put out on social media. But we are doing a deep dive to expose them. These organizations, these entities, these individuals base themselves out of UK and the US, sit there and poison the minds of the policymakers, stew there and spend thousands of dollars lobbying against us. Let's try and understand this entire hydra of hate. Yes, this is an exclusive here on The Right Stand. This is what the Disinfo Lab has put out, ladies and gentlemen. The source is Disinfo Lab. These are the planks. First, Islamophobia in India. Post 2014, then came in casteism in India and US. Thereafter came this entire aspect of K2, Kashmir and Khalistan. So mission K2, not 2K but K2. And of course, with the BJP, it became Hindu versus Hindutva or Hindutva fascism. Before that, it was a communal narrative and of course, Islamophobia narrative. So pre-2014, so these were the four hydras of hate. Before that, targeting Mahatma Gandhi, calling him all sorts of names, trying to say that no, Gandhi is not the Mahatma, he's a fascist, he's a sexual predator, all those kind of things, and encouraging desecration of Mahatma Gandhi's statues across the world, terming Gandhi racist, casteist, sexual predator, and of course lobbying against Indian governments since 2002. So this is a 20-year-old agenda, but of course it has been happening even before that. So this is the overall hydra of hate. Now, how is this hydra of hate? How does it do? So it's got one hub and many spokes, or one fountainhead, and of course many tentacles, one head and many tentacles. So they create organizations like the IAMC, the OFMI, which has seeded its activities after it got exposed big time. Then you have influencers sitting in USCIRF, or those who are parts of these organizations like IAMC, IACSJ, and of course Imana, the ex-members of these organizations who are now perhaps ensconced here and are heavily influenced. They have good friends who are operating. The faces are here. Of course, the Inter-Services Intelligence ISI is named because it is all Pak-backed. It starts with this man, Abdul Malik Mujahid, and of course, Ghulam Nabi Fai. And then this person who's the white face, the Gora face, propped by this Khalistani Bhajan Singh Bhinder, whose name is quietly moved the moment it comes to light. And of course, this is Nadine Mainza. Nadine Mainza is part of the USCIRF and who's heavily influenced. So these organizations influence certain perceptions about the country. And will you believe it if I say that it is their web of disinformation, misinformation that resulted in India being listed as a country of concern in the USCIRF reports for 2 consecutive years in 20 and 21. Now this web, this is how it works. It's Indian American Muslim Council or the IAMC. You have hires Terry Allen's company, Fidelis Government Relations, FGR, to lobby, and $55,000 or 42.29 lakh rupees have been spent by IAMC on lobbying activity and creating events, protests, etc. and perceptions. FGR lobbies in the US Commission on International Religious Freedom, that is USCIRF, and that too specially against India. The USCIRF Commissioner Nadine Mainza is closely linked to the IACSJ. Thereafter, you have the IACSJ, which is a known front for the Pak-based Jamaat-e-Islami, Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar and Simi. So you see how these organizations, they are offshoots of Pakistan-based terror outfits, highly radical pan-Islamist outfits, and of course those controlled by the ISI. Their agenda is to defame India. Their agenda is, no matter what, set the narrative against India. What's the objective? Consistent focus on denting India's global image. This is the mega psyop or the information war that they are conducting. Change the government of India's image from non-violent Gandhiism to fascist, no matter how and where. So then if you don't have somebody who you can attack as an individual, then attack Gandhi himself. Swing the narrative. So those who were saying Gandhi is a bad man, desecrating his images in 2008, 2009 and his putla, now in 2018, 2019 are saying, oh, this is a fascist country, Hindu versus Hindutva narrative. So that's what they would do. The other act, run down Indian legislation as tools of fascism. And there is a whole toolkit. There is also Kashmir shaming, Khalistan propaganda which will happen. They will never talk about the Pakistani bullets, Pak-sponsored bullets and guns that are claiming the lives of Indians. That's never talked about. Project India as casteist, Islamophobe and Hindu fascist. So pick up on these words, try and keep harping these words, repeating these words, getting people to form an this one. Use one instance to create a big hullabaloo about it and do it on foreign soil. Do it in the UK, do it in the US. That's what they do. Propaganda to polish Pakistan's sunken image, no matter how, somehow curate Pakistani image. That's what they're trying to do. But this is an info war that goes beyond leadership or political dispositions. That's the bigger thing. This is a mega psyop game that's being played. There is much more to this, and we will in the course of the coming days expose more. There are those who have openly admitted, who are part of these groups, part of the core base group which is funding all of them as an entity which is based in the US, who sit there and say, why should we hide that we have backed the likes of Gilani, backed the likes of Yasin Malik and funded these kind of activities in Jammu and Kashmir. This is the CNN News 18 exclusive, the truth about the info war against India. Anti-India agenda is the hashtag. There is a lot of information, ladies and gentlemen, and when you go through the information, one only wonders, did we all succumb to these narratives and how are they doing it? Pandit Satish K. Sharma, Chair, British Board of Dharmic Scholars is with us. Chirayu Thakkar, Foreign Affairs expert with us. Suhag Shukla, Executive Director, Hindu American Foundation with us, and Dr. Lavanya Vemsani, Professor at the Shawnee State University, Ohio State, USA with us. Namaste and greetings on the occasion of our 75th year of independence. And thank you for celebrating it, participating, and I've seen a lot of you put out your posts also on that occasion. It's historic. But what's also historic and shocking, and I'm going to start with Pandit Satish Sharma ji, is that this entire information war, they're obsessed, Pandit ji. It's the same group of individuals who manifest as different organizations, link up with different people, and show themselves to be functioning independent of each other, and who will come together to share the stage for a common cause. क्या narrative stitch किया है?
Gee, I would like to compliment Disinfo Labs for piecing this all together. For quite some time, members of our community in the UK and the US, we've been saying there is a problem. There is a network developing. There are vested interests. They're all coming together. They're coordinating an attack. And very few people really paid too much attention. I remember Rajiv Malhotra ji published his Breaking India Forces, and that gave a roadmap at that time. What Disinfo Labs have done is given us a roadmap of what's happening now, at this time. I think it's really important to remember that the consensus building capacity of the Western networks and the dominant colonial networks is very, very powerful. Do you remember weapons of mass destruction?
Yeah.
The whole rhetoric was created that Saddam Hussein had already developed weapons of mass destruction. They devastated a nation, destroyed the Iraqi civilization, and not a single weapon of mass destruction was found. And Tony Blair was granted a knighthood. He's a Knight of the Realm by the British. So please, I think it's vital that we don't underestimate that there is a design behind this consensus building. There are a group of people who are now clearly identified, they're in the open, and they do not have the interests of Bharat at heart. They are working to deconstruct the last existing First Nation civilization. We're the only substantial indigenous pagan civilization left. And if you look for a common denominator in all of the forces that are arraigned against us, they are what would conventionally be called the evangelical forces of the people of the book. I've looked for any other common denominator, and that's the only common denominator that actually exists, and it's the stratum upon which everything else seems to rest. Our audiences should realize that they are the target of this disinformation campaign. The European colonial powers are approaching the end. It's almost as though the colonial slavery dividend has now been depleted, and they don't know how else to substantiate and support their own economies. So they're getting ready now, like vultures, trying to attack a fattened Kamdhin, which is waiting and which is actually creating wealth internally. So everybody should be grateful to Disinfo Labs, and we should give them as much support. The last thing I would say is this disinformation campaign is intended to change policy against Bharat. Now we have to have the Bharatiya government prepare itself to defend its own policies against this. Unless we have policies which reflect a change, a more robust defense against this, I don't think we will move forward. So I really do hope that the powers that be listen to the fact that they need to engage and actually change their own policy engagement. Ban the BBC like other organizations have done so. Hold the Rutgers Hindu-phobics to account like other nations have done so. So we need to act. And I'm hoping that Disinfo Labs, their amazing work, will really give the evidence to the government to be able to act on it.
But it's not as easy as Pandit Sharma is saying it, Suhagji, because you face the hard part of it too. They are quick to use the law to shield themselves and also to attack those who want to expose them. And you've also borne the brunt of it. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. We've been on the front lines of this toxic web since as early as our foundation. We started the Hindu American Foundation in 2003 as a definitively America-based organization that would give voice to Hindu Americans on issues and also educate the public and dispel many of the entrenched stereotypes that we still face as a result of colonial rule in India. And it was as early as 2005 that we began seeing the same iteration, early iterations of what we see today in terms of misinformation campaigns. These, what we did in 2013 as well as 2014 is did an expose report on this web. And I'm so happy to see the Disinfo Labs updating many of the things that we had revealed back in 2014. This is an ecosystem that gets amplified as a result of activists, scholar activists, as well as activist media. And so one of the solutions is that those who are committed to the truth need to begin investing in our scholarship and amplifying the voices of scholarship that is rooted in accuracy and transparency in media houses that are committed to the truth, as well as getting a more engaged citizenry, not just of people in India, but the diaspora, because it's the diaspora that's been the early collateral damage to what is really the target, which is India, a rising India.
You've hit the nail on the head there, but how do we do this? Because there are so many people who are well entrenched across the board. There are entities which are state-funded, entities which are backed by organizations who will push a particular agenda, but they also pay fat salaries, and then they hire people who will fit their agenda and who will write their narratives. There are organizations, Dr. Lavanya Vemsani, who will never allow a counter to be published. They will publish the same very people who will push a particular narrative because they've been put up and projected. And now it's now become, this whole thing has become a business. Disinfo Lab says that they've actually made it a business to do this. And they're making crores of rupees, lots of money, and they're enjoying lavish life while trying to skew the narrative altogether and spreading nothing but a web of misinformation. By the time you know, that's what they say, by the time the truth steps out of the door, the lies have actually had a full round of the city and come back. So that's what they say. So how do you do that in a day and age where information is readily available, disinformation far more readily available?
Good. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
Yes, absolutely correct. The misinformation campaign that is being launched is a concerted effort with lots of organizations, as you recollected, Anand, and the guests before me have spoken. It is a concerted effort. It is more than 2 decades old. So to counter it, it is very difficult because counter voices are not allowed to come out, not allowed to be published. Which is commonly known. For these 20 years, the same thing is going on, and it is going on the same now, right? Who attacked Salman Rushdie in New York, and who issued fatwas against Taslima Nasreen or Nupur Sharma? But that doesn't make any information. That doesn't come out. But what comes out is a misinformation campaign against India, rising India, and Hindus. Has anyone seen a knife-wielding Hindu attacking anybody, anybody's freedom of speech, or jumping on a world stage and knifing somebody? No. But that is what is put out. Even the Hindus have not done anything, and India makes exceptional efforts to take care of the minorities with special scholarships, special schools, special legal procedures, and still being attacked as fascist and not helping. So on the other hand, Hindu, Sikh, Jain, and Christian minorities face very difficult life situations, life and death situation actually, in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, in nations around India. But why doesn't it come out? Right? Somebody is absolutely stopping the information and spreading the misinformation campaign. While Hindu, Sikh, and Christian, Jain minorities are being killed and maimed in many of these countries, a narrative is put forth blaming India, which doesn't do any of these things. Hindus, who haven't actually issued death threats or who haven't done any of these activities as jumping with a knife or anything, are blamed. Where do you think is the disconnect? It's in the information. It's in the information campaign, not really in the activities that are happening. The one-sided narrative is actually blaming India for the things that are not done.
No, very rightly said, and it is evident. It's quite evident because these people never talk about human rights in any of the other nations. The countries they themselves belong to, they don't talk about. Some of these organizations, if you're wondering why is Audrey Trusch's name not there, she's there. She's also part of this group. She is part of this reinvented hack. This community against communalism got reinvented as Hindus for Human Rights. And it was started by the IAMC as one of it. So a totally Muslim-driven group started something for Hindus for human rights with somebody who's sitting from 2002 with a particular narrative. So this whole game, when you unearth it and you do a deep dive, but not everybody does a deep dive, Chirayu Thakkar. What happens is by the time, and they unleashed, we saw Prasiddha Sudhakar do one more study, and ironically she was also part of Rutgers' effort to undermine that, where more than 1,000 Twitter handles were there, which all emanated out of Iran, which are all fake. They had Pakistani addresses and they were trying to push. More than 1 lakh tweets were put out which were fake. But by the time you unearth all of this, a lot of damage is already done. To have somebody like a Greta Thunberg push out a toolkit she had no clue about. You pay people, they'll push out toolkits, and then you see the people who have been tagged. They're all traditionally India haters, Khalistan backers, etc. But they get a free run.
Anand, happy Independence Day to you and all the panelists and the people in the audience. Now you see, Anand, this kind of propaganda war is neither new for India. Earlier it was the Chinese, then the Pakistanis who mastered this art, and this has been going on for quite some time. I think since independence, I'm currently working in archives and I'm reading many files where diplomats were seriously concerned about the Chinese propaganda and the Pakistani propaganda during various stages and during certain historical episodes. Now you see, Anand, from a foreign policy perspective, there are multiple levels at which this threat particularly operates. Now, at the first level is India's relationship with the United States, which I think will not be impacted at the very macro level. I remember one analyst saying very vividly in an earlier panel that I was there in the United States, where she said that, look, every year India adds one Pakistan to its GDP. So the growth that we are currently doing is exactly equal to the GDP of Pakistan. So because India is a vast market, because India has so much tremendous potential, common security, those level, the macro level thing changing. But if you remember, when Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was asked that why did the MEA give a response to a tweet by a celebrity, Dr. Jaishankar said very nice thing, which he said that, look, I have diplomats in all parts of the world, and he was particularly giving the example of Canada, and he said that if I do not arrest this this deluge of disinformation, then the state, what is at stake is the lives of my people there. So I think the word that Suhag used a minute ago, that we are in the front line and there is a collateral damage, at the macro level, this is not going to impact India-US relationship or India's relationship with any other nation. But what threats, the kind of threats this might, the diaspora might feel, Hindus might feel at grassroots level, and having studying lived in the UK, the US, and Europe, elsewhere, I have seen that this kind sometimes be a tool for exclusion of Hindus, exclusion of Indians, and this can have some real life consequences for the diaspora there, who might not be very well accepted, and there might be labels of Hinduphobia or Islamophobia, so on and so forth, which actually manifests in a form of Hinduphobia. So arresting this information is necessary, because at a micro level, at the diasporic level, this can have very tremendous real life impact in the lives of people. And of course, there are geopolitical implications to it, but the people, those who make real geopolitical decisions, they are very well informed, they are very well versed, they have a very well oiled machinery, which gives them a ring-fence perspective of things that
if they are very well informed, and if they have such a I have a problem if somebody who has a skewed understanding or who believes the US Yusuf report is sitting into policy making in the US. There's a serious problem. We have a problem if there are Khalistanis who are getting elected and who are being allowed to campaign. in the United Kingdom. We have a serious problem when something like that happens, Chirayu. I just want to quickly explain some of these organizations which are there, and then I'll take it back to Pandit Satish Sharma ji. The IACSJ, Indian American Center for Social Justice. This is the Facebook name for IAMC. We're putting out I'm just reading this out. Now, it's a known front for the Pak-based Jamaat-e-Islami, Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Toiba and Simi. What is this organization and why is this organization being allowed to proliferate and also prosper is a question. It operates key anti-India movements, Justice for All, Save India, etc. This is the heart of it all, ladies and gentlemen. Employs known anti-India resource persons. They are either Pakistanis, India haters, India baiters, former members of Simi. They are all involved in this. ICNA, it's the Islamic Circle of North America. That's the next. It's a Jamaat-e-Islami front in the United States. It funds and collaborates with the Lashkar-e-Toiba and the Hizbul Mujahideen, and you know very, very well that Jamaat-e-Islami is directly involved with these terror outfits even in Pakistan. Then, and also in Bangladesh. IMANA, Islamic Medical Association of North America. This organization siphoned off funds collected in the name of COVID-19. And Muslim Brotherhood Front in the United States funds Al Khidmat Foundation in Pakistan, and it's closely linked to PIMA, medical wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami, and Lashkar, and of course the Hizbul Mujahideen. The last one, the ISNA, another organization, Constituent Organization of Imana, Islamic Society of North America. That's what they are calling themselves. It's a co-conspirator in this Holy Land terror funding and funds groups like the Hamas, etc. Why are these outfits, Pandit Satish Sharma ji, allowed a free run? Why does the United Kingdom allow somebody who is an open advocate of Khalistan the right to sit in the British Parliament or to fight to sit in the British Parliament?
Gee, the reason is very simple, and that is that the Indian government doesn't hold them to account. Let me give you an example. Very recently, on the shadow benches, the opposition benches, one shadow minister stood in a picket line in an industrial dispute. Now, that was contrary to the code of conduct. If you're a minister, you can only do what the party as a whole wants you to do. And what the leader did is he dismissed this minister. He said, you have not complied with our party position. So, if there are ministers or shadow ministers who do not comply with the stated party position, the government of India and its High Commission and its representatives can demand accountability. I'm stunned that the Indian government hasn't asked the USCIRF, which is a government-supported agency. Why hasn't the American ambassador been summoned and asked to give account? The government of India has to engage in a more robust manner. You know, just for a moment, our Sanatanis, we need to recognize there is a common denominator. I've said it before, in the list of organizations that you've mentioned, there are no Native American indigenous organizations, there are no pagans, there are no humanists, there are no atheists, there are no Buddhists, etc., etc. Who are there? The commonality is exactly the same. There are organizations which are the voices and the mouthpieces of colonizing ideologies. We need to recognize this. Secondly, we need to recognize that there will never be peace with this group. We are at that 5 villages state in the Mahabharata where the Pandavas say, just give us 5 villages. And Duryodhana says no, because ideologically he's threatened. Every Sanatani, every Hindu needs to recognize that ideologically we are at that stage. You know, we are the only people who still teach that every human being is divine and we do not need an intermediary. Can you imagine the ruckus and the devastation that would cause in the religionist organizations who say, oh, we are your intermediaries with God? It would be devastating for them. So we need to recognize that this is the problem. Finally, please, everybody recognize that all of these organizations, they change policy. Yes. They control the way in which governments use their resources and their militaries to target threats. We are being aligned. It's almost as though crosshairs are trying to be focused upon Hindus, because it's the Hindus who are being targeted by this this mechanism. So we have to have robust engagement from the Indian government, and Hindus everywhere need to hold to account the governments to whom they pay their taxation. Why on earth would we be paying taxation to governments who then make it policy to attack the land of our ancestors? Nobody has the freedom now not to engage. We have to engage at every level, in every quarter.
Yeah, Hindu versus Hindutva. This is the kind of narrative that they are stitching, Suhag Shukla ji. And why is the US allowing them ground? If America can stand there and its president can stand there and say that any person who acts against the American state, no matter how long it takes, no matter where you are hiding, we will find you and we will execute you or we will neutralize you. That's what he said about Ayman al-Zawahiri. That's their position. Ayman al-Zawahiri is sitting in Afghanistan, but America is concerned. So why shouldn't India be concerned, and why is America allowing somebody to sit and use American soil to work against and conspiracy against India?
Look, both the US and India are democracies, and that's bound to happen. And the beauty of a democracy is that all of us are positioned to speak out. And that's so important, and we should not lose sight of that, because we can draw a very bleak and hopeless picture, but the fact is that the only way and the only people that can stop this are us. And so there's a need to respond forcefully and clearly. We've seen, especially since 2014, unprecedented attacks on ordinary Hindu Americans, on Hindu American organizations, including Hindu American Foundation, as well as Hindu American elected representatives and candidates. It's an effort to wage whatever information war that these entities have against India, but it's also to diminish the positive and rising voice of Hindu Americans and diminish the positive contributions that Hindus make and people of Indian origin make, no matter where they land up, because we are inheritors of a wisdom tradition that encourages free inquiry. It encourages a freedom centered way of living. And so we're able to very quickly mesh into wherever we move. And one of the things that we've done most recently is this same web that we're talking about has attacked a number of Hindu American entities. And so we're in the middle of a defamation lawsuit against Indian American Muslim Council, against Hindus for Human Rights, as well as Audrey Trushke and Federation of Indian American Organizations, or Christian organizations. And it's not just about defamation. It's not just about the misinformation that they're spreading, but the conspiracy to defame. The fact that they work in collusion to spread misinformation needs to be called out. We were not the only organization that was defamed in a series of articles in Al Jazeera by a quote-unquote reporter, by the way, that is a Indian American Muslim Council Executive Council member. So we need to do more to push back on this, not just as ordinary citizens, not just as members of Hindu American or Indian American organizations, but the government of India itself. I welcome the more forceful rebuttals that we're seeing, especially over the past couple years, from the Ministry of External Affairs. We need to see more of that.
You've said it well. Now look at the candidates whose campaigns were directly affected by these entities. Ami Bera, Nikki Haley, Tulsi Gabbard. There are so many others who were directly, their campaigns were deliberately disrupted, derailed by these people who had an agenda. They came there. But where is the action against such entities? Then you can't just brush it all away, Lavanya Vemsani ji, on the grounds of democracy. Democracy doesn't allow you to defame somebody, derail somebody's campaign and get away with an agenda which has an ulterior motive. A motive driven by hate for a particular nation and its people.
Right. It's absolutely not acceptable. So therefore, I suggest 3 steps should be taken from citizens. Citizens should forcefully counter and put out their reaction to it. And media houses should undertake this and expose. Investigative journalism should work here. And citizens outside of India, the NRIs, should call their representatives, their senators, their representatives, and call and inform them of what is going on and how they are affected. This is what is Hinduphobia. It is resulting in Hinduphobia. So they should highlight it and they should call their representatives. And Indian government, of course, most of the time hasn't taken note of this. But for Indian government also should take proactive role and to counter these disinformation campaigns and also inform the ambassadors or counter these narratives, inform them. The external affairs should send notes to their counterparts in these different countries about
Right.
these organizations and what is going on. So these 4 steps are absolutely important, and this campaign should be countered with all the tools that are there. The media, the citizens, the informing the representatives, and governmental interference. All these 4 steps are very important. This is not a small action that
Right.
counter information would work. It's a large information campaign is necessary.
No, very well said. And the point is, as Pandit Satish Sharma and some of the other panelists were saying, India needs to start exercising its diplomatic clout. The weight of 1 billion plus people, and this country needs to be felt by nations who believe that they can be breeding grounds for such elements who will sit there and orchestrate these kind of disinformation, misinformation campaigns. The source for all our information that we've put out on the show is Disinfo Labs. They put out a lovely 36-minute capsule. Please do sample it, see it, because it's far more revealing. We've just tried to bring out the experts, people who are seeing this manifest in different nations in the US, UK. Chirai is joining us from Singapore, where he's doing his own research, and there are threats of this information war that's being waged against us as a nation. So in the next 25 years, starting now, we need to be a little more conscious and perhaps a little more proactive. Rather than controlling the damage, we should ensure that this damage doesn't happen. To all my panelists, thank you very, very much. Wonderful speaking with you. Very enlightening, engaging discussion, this one. Thank you very much. We're going to take a very short break, ladies and gentlemen, here on The Right Stand. When we come back, the spotlight turned closer home, where a person in Shivamogga is stabbed for supporting Savarkar and sporting a tilak. Stay with us.